only my second Waughcast, and I've already got a homework assignment for you. Old habits, I guess. Former teacher and homeschool dad. Anyway, if you thought I was out of touch in Waughcast 1, you better strap on your Forrest Gump helmet and buckle up, because today I'm going off the rails on a crazy train with Ozzy. Not as far back as the 13th century, but far back enough, 1993. The band was Counting Crows, the CD, August and Everything After, and the song, still one of my favorites, Round Here. That's the dated bee that's buzzing around in my FanDuel Penguins beanie this morning, but if you want to go there with me, you probably should hear the song first, so please go do that. Then we can attempt to get to the bottom of something that's been bugging me for 30 years. Namely, why the narrator and this girl are so miserable in this song. Why they're both simmering cauldrons of perpetual restlessness. And why I actually care about them. Give you a hint, it has something to do with lines and reading between them. Can't wait, right? So I'm Doug, and once again, you found yourself spiraling down the bathtub drain of my second Waughcast. The designated safe space for irrelevant geriatrics who like to make sense of odd stuff that nobody cares about anymore. Welcome. Go listen to the song. See you on the other side. When Counting Crows released a single Round Here from its debut CD, August and Everything After, on September 13th, 1993, more than one critic was quick to suggest that the song struck a chord with rock fans everywhere, mainly because of its young narrator's heartbreaking struggle to find purpose and meaning in a world full of people who have no real sense of purpose or meaning. Indeed, few critics seem to disagree that the narrator in the song, as well as those around him, are struggling with something maddening, a nameless feeling that threatens to destroy them one by one, or worse yet, turn them all into living ghosts. But few critics have offered an honest assessment of what that something that radiates might be. Of course, one might be tempted to pass the narrator's pain off as standard teenage angst, as many critics have done, or to attribute the narrator's frustration, or Maria's for that matter, to being a simple longing to express one's unique voice in a place where everyone looks and sounds the same. But there seems to be a more convincing explanation for the emptiness that both Maria and the narrator feel round here. Indeed, a close reading of Round Here clearly reveals what the song's narrator can't. Namely, that his suffering, as well as Maria's, is the direct result of another type of absence that has little to do with a simple lack of opportunity to stand out in a crowd or to express one's uniqueness. To answer the question of what's tormenting both Maria and the narrator in Round Here, one needs to start by posing an answer to another simple question. Namely, where is Round Here? Is it really anywhere? And are all of the people in the song really all of us? Not quite. The answer to the question can be found in the song's bridge as well as in the final chorus. In the bridge, the narrator refers to sleeping children and mama's little baby, saying that they better get themselves in and out of the lightning. Then in the final chorus, he suggests that round here, we're never sent to bed early and that nobody makes us wait. Then in his closing line, he says that round here we stay up very, very late. These lines seem to conjure up images of youth, and it doesn't seem like such a stretch to suggest a link to college-age students occupying dorms or rental houses on a nameless campus somewhere, on their own for the first time, no longer under the supervision or authority of parents. It's a place where people talk like lions and carve out their names. A place of nonstop excitement and, one might surmise, constant partying. A place where, at least superficially, everyone seems to be having a great time and doing just fine. But is this really the case? The narrator seems to indicate that it isn't. When the song opens, the narrator tells us that he steps out the front door like a ghost into a fog, and he quickly reveals that this place where he lives is a place where no one notices the contrast of white on white, and where there exists a crumbling difference between wrong and right. He's obviously frustrated round here, hinting that everyone looks and sounds the same and suggesting that there doesn't seem to be any clear moral compass governing the behavior of the people with whom he daily comes into contact. Next, the narrator tells us, figuratively, that he doesn't know where he's going, but we do know that he's just left a girl named Maria back in the house crying, and he seems to feel powerless to do anything about it. The listener at this point assumes that the narrator and Maria are living together, that they're involved in a relationship. But the narrator reveals nothing to indicate why this relationship has gone awry. Rather, he launches into Maria's personal history, revealing that she came from Nashville with a suitcase in her hand and that she wants to meet a boy who looks like Elvis, further reinforcing the notion that Maria, like most of the other people around here, is probably young and naive, blinded by the foolish ambition and unrealistic expectations that come with inexperience. Maria, like most college-age students, seeks a thrill, an adventure, and she wants it to be as far removed from the monotony and predictability of her life under her parents' roof as it can be, as she walks along the edge of where the ocean meets the land, like she's walking on a wire in a circus. And as she parks her car outside the narrator's house, takes her clothes off, and says she's close to understanding Jesus. Maria, like so many other college-age students, mistakenly concludes that happiness and fulfillment are somehow linked to being different, to being misunderstood, to being quirky and weird, to living life on the edge. The narrator, though, knows better. Throughout Round Here, he repeatedly indicates that something's not right with Maria, with the people around him, with his own life. With a heavy sarcasm that belies his frustration with his surroundings, the narrator reveals to us early in the song that round here, we always stand up straight, and that round here, something radiates. He later repeats the sentiment, offering a contrast between appearance and reality, juxtaposing the lie that round here, we're carving out our names, with the painful truth that round here, we all look the same. He goes on to say that round here, we talk just like lions, but we sacrifice like lambs, before lamenting the fact that round here, Maria's slipping through his hands. But it's not until the song's bridge that the narrator reveals to us what's really eating at him. When in a mocking admonition that resembles that of a stereotypical parent to a child, he warns both Maria and the people round here that sleeping children better run like the wind out of the lightning dream. Mama's little baby better get herself in out of the lightning. This series of lines seems to betray the narrator's frustration with the fact that everything his parents warned him about living on his own with his girlfriend seems to be coming true. And he's royally pissed off about it. It's an unwelcomed realization for him. This fact that an absence of authority and moral boundaries seems only to produce confusion and discontent. This realization is underscored when the narrator shares of his encounter with the girl in the car in the parking lot, whose walls are crumbling and who's looking up at the building and thinking of jumping. The girl tells the narrator that she's tired of life and that it must be because she's tired of something round here. In short, the narrator seems to see in this girl the ultimate end of every person whose life has no boundaries. And the image sticks with him, haunts him, so much so that he confesses just a few lines later that round here, she's always on my mind. By the end of the song, the narrator is so completely exasperated by Maria's lack of a moral center and his own inability to connect with the chaos of his existence that he seems to experience a moment of personal crisis. At one point, begging whoever will listen to catch me because I'm falling. Because, oh man, I said I'm under the gun round here. In fact, it's very telling that the narrator's final line in the song is the rock bottom admission that he can't see nothing round here. So ultimately, round here is a song about the absence of lines, of authority, of rules. This absence explains why both Maria and the narrator, as well as the girl in the car in the parking lot, are miserable. In the narrator's world, no one tells anyone else what to do, and everyone does whatever the hell he or she wants without any apparent consequences. But the truth is that in a world without rules, the difference between wrong and right can only crumble in time. And in the end, everyone will be reduced to being ghosts wandering around in a fog where the only contrast is that of white on white. After all, as the saying goes, how can one appreciate the crossing of lines if there are no lines to cross in the first place? In the end, the narrator in Round Here is lamenting the loss of structure and order in society, at least among its young. He's lamenting a world where there are no longer any such colors as black and white, but only various shades of listless, monotonous grays. This revelation is the brilliance, the surprise of Round Here, the thing that sparks so much interest in the song. The fact that such a high-profile frontman as Counting Crows' Adam Duritz, as sensitive and self-deprecating a soul as he was, would express a very moral sentiment, one that runs decidedly contrary to the typical message of nonconformity and self-gratification preached by so many other songwriters today. Namely, that the ultimate fate of any society without boundaries, indeed the ultimate fate of a man's soul without a moral center, can only be chaos, ruin. So today's $64,000 question. Why bring this song up now in 2023? Well, I think it's fairly telling that the chaos, disorder, and anarchy that so unraveled the narrator in Round Here, that made the girl in the car in the parking lot think of hurling herself from yonder building, it isn't just still with us in 2023. It's actually transcended anything beyond our wildest imaginations. It's become the norm. It's man's new religion. Not only has it supplanted the tired, superficial, outdated mantras of those pesky, self-righteous conservative parents of the early 1990s, it's even replaced the fundamental bedrock at the core of their narrow-minded thinking, God and religion, to the point where it's not just students who are in a state of perpetual disillusion anymore, it's also their parents, their pastors, their teachers and political leaders. In short, it's all of us. We've strayed well away from the garden, as it were, so much so that I can't help but marvel over the uncanny similarity of our country's current cultural and spiritual demise to that of the fall of Rome. But we'll let the political podcast pundits handle that one. For our purpose here, I'd just like to point out something that used to be fairly obvious as recently as 5 years ago, but that now is lost on so many people. That a society, a culture, a civilization that's blurred the lines of morality so much that the lines themselves have become obliterated, pretty much non-existent. Well, let's just say that this culture or civilization isn't very far from obliteration and non-existence itself. In short, we once were, are now, and always will be a people in need of lines, boundaries, a shared moral compass that clearly enables us to see when we've strayed too far from the path, that clearly illumines the path ahead so that we can walk forward without fear of bumping into things. Don't get me wrong, it's always fun to break away from the everyday, to boldly go, as our Trekkian friends like to say, where no man has gone before. I mean, it's how explorers find new lands to, well, explore, how hikers find new adventures to live into, how couples who've been married for half a century find new ways to appreciate each other. But make no mistake about it, the beauty of an explorer's discovering new land is ultimately the return home to share his discovery, to savor his accomplishments, to hug the very people who inspired him to explore in the first place. The beauty of a hiker's new adventure is in living to tell the tale and having the safety and comfort of a well-worn path to return to, to steady his beating pulse, to reflect on his accomplishment, to put his adventure in perspective, to gain some sense of context so he can appreciate it all the more. And finally, the beauty that married couples being able to discover new ways to spice things up, well, that thrill lasts for all of a minute. And despite the mountain of misinformation to the contrary, it isn't actually tearing down the boundaries of taboo that keeps them together. It's their shared history that they keep returning to, the familiar that they can rely on in each other. It's the literal and metaphorical scars on each of their bodies that they can run their index fingers along. It's the long line of pain, loss, suffering, and joy that dots the road behind them that they've walked together. You lose that sense of the familiar, the predictable, the recognizable, well, you lose everything. Suddenly, nothing makes sense anymore. There's no longer any point of reference. The plumb line, the blueprints, the level that you used to build the house are all gone. And all you're left with are 100 bags of concrete, a bunch of random boards, a bucket of nails, a saw to cut stuff, a trowel to smooth, and maybe a hammer to swing. Good enough to erect a short-term lean-to, but hardly enough to build another Sistine Chapel. So why are Maria and the narrator so lost, so exasperated around here? Like I said, I think it has something to do with the absence of lines, the absence of a worldview grounded in something more substantive than perpetual hedonism and self-gratification. A worldview grounded in something greater than ourselves, someone greater than ourselves, a someone who's already taken the guesswork out of life, a someone who showed us a better way 2,000 years ago, who finally gave mankind a compass, a point of reference by which to measure, understand, and appreciate everything. The problem is that in our diluted selfishness and preoccupation with the material, we've traded this someone's promise for the biggest, oldest lie of all, the same one that propelled two innocents out of the beautiful order of a perfect garden and into the chaos of confusion and disorder. And there's only one way to get back to that proverbial garden. Rediscover the blessed, sacred joy of discernible lines. The lines that show us where to park our cars at Walmart. The ones that keep us on the right side of highways. The ones that show us where to put our feet when we climb ladders. The ones that identify the point of no return for swimmers in the ocean. The ones that keep us from cutting the same grass twice when we mow. And last but certainly not least, the ones that warn us when we've strayed too far from the path of all that's good and holy in our lives, suddenly finding ourselves plunged into the thickest, deepest, and darkest forest we've ever known.